the fighting game community is undergoing a quiet revolution with how they play fighting games. And that is a switching up of input method, a changing of the guard, so to speak. There's a lot of people who prefer arcade stick, and if you want the arcade experience, fair play. They're quite expensive to buy and mod if you want one. And the same goes for traditional leverless options as well. We're talking Hitbox, Empress, Snackbox Micro, all fantastic products, but you're going to have to spend a couple $100 to get there. So it's not exactly accessible for those who, might not be able to afford a controller like that. But now one brand is actually breaking down barriers and offering accessible controllers thanks to the OpenStick community. They do the Flatbox mod, among other things. But one company's adopted it, named Haute, recently rebranded as Cosmox, who are selling the Haute42 controllers, which are incredibly popular, cost less than $100 to buy and ship, and there are actually a couple of things that you can do to them to make them sound a hell of a lot more expensive than they actually are. That includes changing up the default switches and adding a sound dampening modification, which I'll show you how to do right now. I've actually got one of Haute's different controllers here. The M16, which is just like the T16, just metal, basically. So you actually look in here, you'll see that the switch they use here is a red switch. Now, these red switches, for all intents and purposes, are fine for most people. But if you're not most people and you want a bit of extra flair on your board, you might want to replace these switches. And that might be kind of difficult for you. So what you want to do first, if you were to mod your board, was to pull out the switch. So you can get a pair like this off Amazon for, really, really cheap, basically. And just grab it. And don't do it like that. Alright, so after that little mishap, the switch is fine. Everything is fine. Don't do it like that. You can, and it's fine, but you should probably take more care if you care about it. The red switch is, fairly basic, so you want to swap this out for something else. Now, Haute actually make their own, named the Wind Engine switch. And these wind engine switches are blue, not to be confused with blue switches themselves, rather confusingly. But these are linear as well, and they're actually lubed. Now, what that means for you is that they're going to have a smoother kind of actuation. So the reds can be a little bit scratchy. They can be, they can not feel quite as nice. So I'll just install the blue here, and you'll see the difference in the quality. So to install it, you want to go pin first. So I've got 2 pins down here and 2 pins on the board itself. And I want to go the pin first. So you want to align the pins and then press down. If you don't do this, and if you just kind of smash it in, you might bend the pins on the switch. Now that's not the end of the world, as long as they don't fall off. You can just bend them back. So we've got a blue switch here. The one next to it is red. Let's test which one sounds better. So we'll just go for the red switch first. Bit rattly, bit hollow sounding. Now let's try the blue. You'll see that, there's a more muted sound profile there. And whenever you're smacking buttons, you want something that's a little bit more muted. But we can actually go one step further than this too. Now, I'll show you on the blue switch. So we've got this little cap here, and that has a stem. We call this the Cherry NX stem. And what this is just, the way that your button attaches to the switch itself. And a classic keyboard model that I think a lot of the community's abandoned now because of, different advancements in technology are little O-rings you can get. Now, these O-rings cost me £4 on Amazon for a pack of 200, and they do make a difference, albeit a very slight one. So let's put the O-ring on the keycap like this, and then put it back on. Now, what's that going to do is going to mute the bottom out of the switch. So by doing that, you create a more muted sound profile across the whole thing. So let's try again. Red versus blue with the dampener on it. So it's a lot more muted sounding, essentially. And just by comboing these two very basic mods together, you can make your Haute sound not incredible, but as good as it can be compared to what it could be when it's stock, essentially. It doesn't cost much either. If you were to replace the buttons, you can get a set of these off AliExpress for, I think, $5 or $6 or so shipped. So I got some purple ones here, and if you wanted to do that, it's super simple as well. So I'm going to take one of these, take the cap off here. I'm going to transfer the O-ring onto here as well, so we retain our mod, which can be done so like this, and put it on there. Voila! The artwork is really easy to replace on these as well. So let's flip it over, and you'll see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 screws on there. And now these are kind of half done, so if you have any sort of Phillips head or flathead screwdriver, just take them out, and these sandwiches the sandwich kind of falls apart for the Haute42. So make sure you keep everything aligned. Add your artwork, design it up in Photoshop or whatever. You can find their template on their Discord, plop some artwork that you want on there, commission an artist, nab it off Dan Boru like I did for this Turn A Gundam stick. And there you have it. You have a fully customised Haute42. You've not broken the bank, and I wager you probably spent less than $100 while doing so. I've just realised that I've not put any actual sound comparisons in here, so here you go. This is the Razer Kitsune. This is the stock Snackbox Micro. This is the stock Haute M16, or Cosmox M16. This is the stock M16 with red switches and the O-ring mod. This is a customised Haute42 with wind engine switches and the O-ring mod. With the comparison out of the way, I think it's fair to say that the extra switches and the O-ring mod do make a big difference when it comes to sound profiles on your Leverless arcade controller. These mods aren't strictly for the Haute42. If you have a flat box or anything that's kind of similar to it that uses an NX stem and an NX switch or an NX low profile switch, you can get the wind engine switches. You can get something called the KL Choc V2s. There's a bunch of options basically, but for my money, the wind engine switches and a little O-ring mod will go a hell of a long way, and I bet you've not spent $100 while doing so. But the reason why I really like the Haute42 is its simplicity for modding, its community-based firmware and software, and how cheap it is to kind of assemble something like that. I mean, look at this. It looks sick, and it cost me less than $100, and it looks amazing, and sounds good too.